So what if I told you that anything in life will help you get closer to your goals and you're able to flip any negative situation into a positive one? This is exactly what Ryan Holiday tries to teach in his book Obstacles Away. He says that overcoming obstacle is made up of 3 critical steps: perception, action, and will. So in this video, I will break them down and talk about each of the 3 main steps individually and add a few interesting stories from the book. Now, the first step is perception. Perception is about how we see the world around us, the things that happen, and the meaning that we attach to things that happen around us. And one of the main takeaways from this section is how events in life aren't neither good nor bad, and it's the judgment that we attach to them that makes them so. An interesting story from the book is the story of John D. Rockefeller. He was an oil magnate in the US, and when he was about 18 years old, he starts working, and it's 1857, which is when one of the biggest crises in US history begins. There's a lot of panic around him. After a couple of years, a group of investors decides to go to Rockefeller and it gives him $500,000 if he can find the right oil wells to invest in. He looks around, takes some time, and after some time he goes back to the group of investors and decides to return the $500,000 because he doesn't see the right opportunity. Then fast forward about 20 years and Rockefeller has become an oil magnate, and he at some point owns himself about 90% of the US oil industry. This shows how, number one, he was able to keep his cool in these uncertain times and hasn't succumbed to the peer pressure of people around him or the frenzy and the panic that comes along with the crisis. He didn't force his investment but waited for the right time, and actually Rockefeller was able to amass most of his wealth during these times of crises because despite people panicking around him, he was able to control himself and only deploy the capital, as we've seen, when he saw that the time was right and he saw the right opportunity. And this goes to show how events like a crisis, which most people will deem as a bad thing, can be either good or bad depending on your judgment about the event. For most people, I guess, an economic crisis, a very hard economic crisis like the 1857 one, it is a bad thing. But if you were to ask Rockefeller, is an amazing thing. It's probably one of the best things that happened to him because that's when he was able to build most of his wealth. Why? Because he was able to keep his cool and only act when he was certain there was a good opportunity on the table, which shows that events aren't good, aren't bad intrinsically. It's about how we view them and what we do that makes them so. Now, part 2 is about action. Thoughts and perceptions are very important, but they're meaningless without action, specifically focused and consistent action. An interesting story is that of Demosthenes, who's arguably the greatest speaker in ancient Greece. But actually, as a kid, he was quite an awkward kid. He was very frail and weak, and he had a very severe speech impediment. What he did was he decided to take action to improve his situation. He put himself in his cave and was practicing hours and hours at a time, days at a time, to become a better speaker. He used to practice speaking with pebbles and stones in his mouth, giving full speeches against the wind or uphill in these very tough conditions to get him used to speaking more clearly. And after all this practice, he then ended up becoming the best speaker in ancient Greece. Now, it doesn't have to go as far as Demosthenes did, but this clearly shows how something that was quite clearly an obstacle, and a very big one, which was a severe speech impediment, didn't stop Demosthenes from becoming one of the greatest speakers in his time, thanks to consistent action. Now, part 3 is will. It goes back to a core Stoic idea of the dichotomy of control. There are 2 buckets of things. There are things that we can control and things that we can't control. Among the things that we can control, there's our will and our thoughts, and things that we can't control is most other things like our body, other people, what other people say, what other people do, external events. And the concept that comes out in the book is that of the inner citadel. A citadel in general is like a fortress that's often used at times of war to take shelter in. And the idea of the inner citadel is to have a fortress in your mind that can't be touched by external forces. And an interesting story on this topic is the one of Thomas Edison, who was an American inventor. When he was 67 years old, he was having dinner at home with his family, and one of his employees rushes in and says that a fire had broken out in his factory. He slowly goes out to the factory and looks at the flame that's burning everything down, and he calmly goes to his son and tells him, go get your mother and friends, tell her that she'll never see a fire like this again. And just imagine being in your 60s and having worked so hard and seeing a life worth of work, hard work, going up in flame in front of you. It was estimated that the worth of the factory and what had burned down was about $20 million in today's money. Imagine seeing that in front of you going down to ash, and what he does is accepts it. I guess this shows to an extreme level the strength of will, how something that could be the worst thing that ever happens to someone, and I could quite easily see someone, going depressed if they see their lifetime's work going to dust in front of them. But he didn't. He used that as an opportunity to admire this fire and then goes back to work. Now, these were the 3 main steps of overcoming obstacle. Now, it's inevitable that no matter what you want to pursue and want to achieve in life, you will come across some kind of obstacle. And it's about seeing things for what they are, doing what we can, and enduring what we must. I hope you enjoyed the video. I really enjoyed reading the book, and I'd love to hear from you if you find it useful. I find it very useful because it's a way for me to go back through the book and what I've read and highlighting the main concepts, and seeing them out loud to a camera is a way for me to cement them a bit better in my mind, and it will be a way to get a nice refresher if I watch it back. And I would love to do this for more books that I read, so let me know if you have any suggestions to pick up next. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, bye.